Howdy, image bears. Welcome back to Christian Craft. We're on episode 17. I hope you guys are having a blessed day. Today, we are going to get some diamond armor, get some diamond tools, and hopefully enchant them up with our new books. But before we get into that, we have 11 new subscribers. If you guys are new here, for every subscriber, we plant some wheat. Look at our family growing. Look at how awesome this is, guys. That's so sweet. We're going to get right into business. This is probably going to be a new personal record for shortest video because I overslept, folks. I didn't set my alarm. I just woke up naturally, and I thought I was going to wake up at like 8 or 9, and I woke up at like 9:45. And I have to leave for class at 10:30. So, probably like a 30-minute video. Probably like a 30-minute video. So, let's just get right into it. All right, you mister. I'm going to... Today's video is going to be shorter, so it's going to be a little more unorganized with my thoughts. But some announcements. Hey, you go in there. We have a Discord. If you want to talk to me, you want to ask me any questions, you want to talk to other image bears, you just want to have some community, talk about whatever. Talk about God, talk about why you don't believe in God, why you do believe in God, talk about your worldview, talk about morality, talk about apologetics, talk about whatever. Join the Discord. It's in the link of this video. Sorry. The link's in the description of this video. The link is also in the channel description. And check the community post tab. And one more thing, we also started an Instagram, Image Bear Instagram. So check that out. We are upgrading here, folks. We've got an Instagram. We've got a Discord. Getting lots of subscribers. Life is good, guys. Life is really good. Would you please kindly, sir, go into your chamber? I know I should just get more rails. I'm gonna work smarter and not harder, okay, guys? Never mind. We don't have any iron. Cool. So that could be problematic. All right. We are going to... This is going to be a little cringe. I know, it's going to be a little cringe. But we're going to recycle. Okay. Let's see this here. No, that is not what I want to happen. So yeah, announcements, Instagram, and a Discord. Did you just go in on your own volition? What the heck? Where are you? And then, like I was saying, it's going to be a little disorganized with my thoughts. But I would like to respond to some comments. I've had some lovely emails. I've had some lovely questions in YouTube. Like comment section. This is not going to be like the full Q&A video. Okay? We're going to probably do a full Q&A video tomorrow or within the next couple of days. But for the time being, one of the big questions that has been frequently asked is this idea of being a good person. You know, like, Riggs, I agree with so much of what you're saying. I just don't see God's existence as reliable or likely. I think the resurrection is an arbitrary historical event to have to affirm in order to have a newness of life. And I just want to say, thank you for your honesty. That's a good question. I understand that question. And the answer I'm going to give you is probably not going to be very satisfactory. I'm going to be honest. And I'm also kind of answering two questions in one. Well, not necessarily a question, I guess, but a point was made to me in my historical evidence for the resurrection video Like, I think the argumentation for the resurrection is really strong, but I don't think that history alone is sufficient to be a Christian. I would completely agree with that point. I would completely agree that affirming logically or thinking it's historically reliable, the resurrection, that is not enough to become a Christian. Okay? To be a Christian, God must transform your life, right? This is where we get into some soteriology, okay? I'm not going to talk about, my denomination. I don't want to be divisive. I don't want to, I just want to be anything I talk about the Bible, it could be something that everyone can arrive at because my source is the Bible, right? Every Christian should be able to arrive at what I'm arriving at. That being said, my soteriology is pretty reformed, to be honest. So I believe in moral agency, of course, as another way of saying free will, We'll have a whole video on free will. I actually don't really love the term libertarian free will because the idea is that, of course, free will and rights are rooted in God historically, right? But I think in today's context, it's like autonomy and whatever. We'll get into it another time. Basically, I don't think that rights derive from ourselves. I think rights derive from God, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So things like you have the right to life is because life belongs to God. You are God's creation. Humans don't have the authority to take what belongs to God. Right? And that's the same thing with consent. Somebody doesn't have the right to defile your body because your body is God's temple. You are a cherished, loved creation by God who deserves love and respect, right? So I'm not saying I don't believe in autonomy. Don't clip that out of context. I'm just saying I don't believe that that human will is self-sufficient. I think that human will is still ultimately sourced from God's ordination, right? And then some people would be like, then you don't believe in free will. That's not true. I see no contradiction between God's sovereignty and free will. I don't. I see no contradiction. Besides the point, I didn't want to get into Calvinism versus Arminianism. Maybe another video we'll do that. Okay, maybe another video. But not today's video. So then back to that point of the history of the resurrection alone is not sufficient to convince me of Christianity. Yeah, I agree. I believe that the only way you can know God is if the Son has drawn you. The only way that you can have relationship with God is that God's grace is revealed to you. That God reaches out and chooses you and you respond. Don't be making false assumptions about what I'm saying. I'm not saying that God's will is arbitrary and it doesn't take into account anything. Don't straw man me, okay? My point is simply that we are saved by God. God's will and God's grace is what saves us. Okay? So that one email, I totally agree. Me just giving my historical reasons for the resurrection, that alone is not sufficient to convince somebody of Christianity. I'm in agreement with you. And now about the comment of what about a person who's a good person, who lives a good moral life? Riggs, everything you said, I agree with. I just don't agree with the God part. I've talked about this in another video, and I'm going to bring it up again. God gives people over to his desires. Whoa, sorry. God gives people over to their desires. God gives people a newness of life and enables them to serve him. God also gives people over to themselves. So if you're watching these videos and you're like, I hate God, I want nothing to do with God, I don't believe in God, maybe it's not a hatred. I don't believe in God. I don't think it's reasonable to believe in God. I don't think I need God to live the type of life that you were explaining, Riggs. One, I think you should reconsider and continue watching my videos, and hopefully I'll bring some more light to why the Christian worldview is a superior worldview. But also secondly, just like logically here, if you don't want anything to do with God, why should he spend eternity with you? You don't want him. If you don't want him on this earth, if you don't want us to be with God on this earth, why would you want to be with him in eternity? And what if you're saying, well, what about a person who lives a good life because they want to go to heaven? They want to go. I guess we should talk about what heaven is and the afterlife is, right? That was another question of like, what do you think is of the afterlife? Heaven. What do I think of the afterlife? I believe that human beings were created out of the overflow and abundance of God's love. Human beings were created out of the overflow and the abundance of God's love. God is totally self-sufficient. God is in perfect eternal love. 56 is insane. We're saying no to that, boys. Sorry. We're going to re-roll. I know that's prop 4, but I'm not spending that many emeralds on it. Ooh. Tempting. God lives in perfect love with the Son and the Spirit. Father, Spirit, Son, for all eternity, live perfectly and are self-sufficient and self-existent and in a divine mystery. God created us who would fall out of the abundance of his love to bring him glory and to redeem and reconcile us. Our created state in the book of Genesis, our created state was to bear God's image. God created us so that we would be with him, that we would be like him, that we would love him, that we would carry his name with dominion and authority, that we'd make the world beautiful, right? My video about like Genesis and about the redemptive storyline of the Bible, I think that's an important part to understand my theology on why you can't just be a good person. Why being a good person isn't enough to go to heaven. God created us for love and intimacy. That's what God created us for. That's what God called us to do. God commissioned us to participate in his work. What is the work of God? God created order out of chaos. That's what I was talking about last video, and you said you agree with me, right? We should not be so obsessed about arbitrary things like a paycheck and a job title and what's your degree. We shouldn't be so obsessed with arbitrary things like that. We should be concerned with people's well-being. We should take suffering and bring peace. That's bringing order from chaos. We should take poverty and bring prosperity. That's bringing order from chaos. What I'm saying is, in order to even conceptualize living a quote unquote good life, logically it requires God, right? So I don't want to skip too many steps and say, like, this is what I think about heaven. This is what I think about the afterlife. This is what I think about living a good life. In a world without God, where does goodness come from? When you say, and when I say you, I'm not talking to you specifically, of course. I'm talking to just like in general. When a person asks, well, isn't it okay to be a good enough person? What does it mean to be a good person? Is the standard of being with God goodness or perfection? We were created to dwell with God perfectly. And in God's eternal, unbroken redemptive plan, he created the Garden of Eden so that it was able to be corrupted by human folly and by the devil's perversion. And God allowed that and immediately purposed that. God brought that about so that it could prefigure the beauty of the gospel. That, you know, the serpent who deceived you and brought death into the world, I am going to crush his head. You know how in your foolishness, in your naivete, you like foolish children fell away from me? Well, now I'm going to bring you revelation of my glory through my son and redeem you. I'm going to destroy death and the devil, and I'm going to repair my relationship with you, right? And the image of heaven, the afterlife, is a new heaven and a new earth. Heaven is eternal presence with God. That's what heaven is. Heaven is the eternal presence and glory of God. That's why I keep saying to you, and again, you is the general sense. In the general, I've gotten so many mending books. I don't need mending anymore. Heaven is the escalated state of our created order. Ooh, 31, I have to take it. I can zombify these guys. I just don't have enough emeralds. This is going to be rough. I hope he doesn't refresh his trade. Oh, wait. I just realized I could have done the same thing with the prot guy. I could have just bought these. I kind of an oversight. That's all fine. We definitely want efficiency 5. So we're going to lock it in with the bookshelf. Probably should have done that with the prop 4 guy. We can always zombify these guys later. If you guys don't know, you zombify villagers and it makes their trades cheaper. Fun fact. So if our created order, our created state, our nature is to dwell with God, and then our nature is corrupted, and now we have a nature that is broken and fallen, a nature that is sinful, and we hear the word sinful in America, and we don't really understand what that even means. If I say I am a sinner at birth, it's like, you're saying you're this wicked, evil, terrible creature as a baby. That's not necessarily what sin means. To be born into sin is to be born separated from God. We are born separated from God, and that's like an obvious, observable truth. Like even in the comments, you're asking, not asking, but like saying like, this world is so corrupt and evil. The only thing that could fix it would be the second coming of Jesus. Like there's something innate about our world that we see evil and fallenness. We see evil and fallenness in our world. Why do we have a mechanism to recognize fallenness? What's the standard of what's whole? What's the standard we have of how things should be? How are we able to say this world is evil? I think it's sufficient to live a good life. What is your measurement of goodness? How do you know that our world is fallen and needs to be repaired? Like, that's just an innate understanding of God's ways, in my opinion. So if heaven is just the escalated state of what we were created for, it is God's perfect glory, God's intimacy. There is no death. There is no sickness. There is no pain. There is no suffering. God wipes every tear. We dwell in his perfect presence. We worship him and love him for eternity. If you don't want to spend time with God on this earth, if you don't want to seek God's presence on this earth, then you should be absolutely content. Like logically, like being logically consistent, you should be absolutely content with the idea that that you live separated from God forever. Because it's like an inverted Pascal's wager. Ironically, it's like, if you don't believe in God, either God's not real or God is real and you spend eternity separated from him. But if you don't want anything to do with God, then the idea of being separated from eternity shouldn't scare you. I think it should scare you. I think it should scare everyone. I don't think there's going to be a single person who's separated from God in eternity who is not going to regret and recognize that they're going to live in eternal conscious torment. That's what I believe. And I know that's a hard pill to swallow. I'm going to just stand firm on the Bible. And I understand that that's hard to hear, but that's the truth. Now, as far as, let's stop using an extreme example of somebody who wants nothing to do with God. What about the people who are like, I want to believe in God and I want to live a good life. I'm just not convinced of the resurrection. I think extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. I'm not convinced. If you're saying, I want to believe in God, I want to go into heaven if heaven is real, I want those things, I just don't know if it's true, then you're in the right place. You're watching these videos. I promise you guys, I'm not going to be able to answer every good question. You guys have asked amazing questions. Let's have some patience. This series is going to be a long series. I need to have patience. We all need to have patience because I desperately want to answer every single question perfectly. And I'm flawed. I'm thankful that I've made these videos and I've made even a little impact. Like, if people watch this while they go to bed, while they get ready for the day, like, that blesses me. So if your statement is, Riggs, I don't believe in God because I'm not convinced, not because I reject God, not because I reject him or I don't want him. I'm just not convinced of an event like a resurrection. I'm not convinced that God exists. Then if your statement is, I want to believe in God, if God is real, I do want to worship him. If that's your statement, then continue to investigate it. And I want to encourage you that you're already doing that. Now I'm speaking not just generally, I'm speaking to you, Fridge Burns. You're reading the book of John. You are investigating. You're watching these videos. You asked me, hey, send me some videos about your views on origin of life. You're reading the book of John and you're saying you enjoy it, even if you don't think it's literal or historical. You don't need to take in all of Christianity in one breath. Just like little baby steps. if you just like, there are people who read the Bible and they recoil. They're like, oh, the Bible is disgusting. The Bible is gross. I hate the words of Jesus. I disagree if you, like, somebody says that Jesus wasn't literal, his words aren't meant to be literal. Like, if somebody says that it's mythologized, like, I disagree with that. But if you say it's mythologized and you're like, I still think Jesus's words are powerful, I still think that they're transformative and we should live our life by them, I think you have a heart that is going to seek God. So I want to give like a very simple final answer to that type of question. And when I say final, I don't mean I'm never going to talk about it again. I guarantee I'm going to talk about it again in longer detail. I mean final within the context of this video. If a person's not convinced of the resurrection, if they're not convinced that God exists because they say God's glory has not been overwhelmingly revealed to them, you know, God is hidden. If I should spend eternity with God, then the burden of proof is on God to reveal himself to me. You know, if I'm supposed to accept the resurrection to have eternal life, then the resurrection should have more overwhelming proof. If those are your statements, if your statements are, I want to believe in this, I don't think there's sufficient evidence, then the solution is just to keep investigating the evidence. Right? If you can tell me with a clear conscience, you've surveyed all of the evidence, you have looked into every deep corner, you've gone down every rabbit hole, you've done all the research and you've investigated sufficiently Christianity, so you've researched it sufficiently where you're not convinced and you'll never be convinced, then my videos can't help a person like that. But people like you, Fridge Burns, who you're like, I'm not convinced of this. I view the cross as an arbitrary historical event that is like, I don't see the correlation between why I need to believe in the resurrection and how that translates to me living a good life. But help me understand that. Like, I really appreciate your worldview. I think you have a respectful and a learning and an investigatory worldview. I've never once heard you like shut down or mock what I'm saying. I just hear you like wrestle with what I'm saying. You just wrestle with it and you want to learn. And I admire that. So, why do I keep saying you have to serve God? You have to believe in God. You have to accept the resurrection. Why do I keep speaking in religious language when I say you have to be a good person? I guess firstly, when you say live a good life, what does that mean? What does goodness mean? Is good objective? Is there objective good? Is living a moral and virtuous life objective? Or could anyone live a good life because goodness is ultimately up to the individual or the culture? So I would guess out of logical necessity, not to be moral. I'm not saying you must believe in God to do good things. Atheists do amazing things, you know? Buddhists do amazing things. Muslims do amazing things. People all over the world do amazingly good deeds. I'm saying, what's the foundational underpinning for what makes something good? What is goodness? Where does that derive from? That's my point. Is when you call something good, when you say, I just want to live a good life. I don't believe in God, but I want to live in a good life. I want to live a good life. I want you to ask yourself, what is a good life? What is the measure of a good life? Is it objective? Is there objective moral values? If there are objective moral values, I think that means that naturalism fails. I don't think naturalism is compatible with an objective moral value system. And I can talk more about that in a future video. And if you say, no, there is no objective moral values, then that's an even easier answer for your questions of, if there's no objective moral values, then living a good life is arbitrary. You and I can agree on what it means to live a good life, but ultimately it's subjective. That's what happens if we take those points to their logical end. There's so many good questions that I want to answer in this video, but I just genuinely do not have the time. So I'm sorry if this video felt a little rushed. I'm sorry if it felt like I didn't get to certain questions. I will. Give me time. I would love to get to more questions. I would rather answer one question to the best of my ability than give a bunch of half answers to a ton of questions. So specifically the questions about extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. I'm not convinced by history alone that the resurrection happened. I agree with you. I don't agree with the epistemology. We'll do a whole video about that epistemology. I guarantee it. But I agree with you that history alone is not sufficient to become a Christian and have your life transformed by Jesus. Of course. I believe that God himself reaches out to people and saves them. That's my view. And you respond to that call. And if you reject it, God's going to give you over to that. And if you accept it, then you have an eternity secured with the Heavenly Father. And then now, to reiterate, why do you keep speaking in religious terms? Why do you keep speaking in these religious terms? I find it totally unnecessary to live a good life to be Christian. You don't need to be a Christian to do good things. You don't. Do you need to be a Christian to do a math equation? No. You need to be a Christian, or a theist, I guess, to have a logically sound understanding of where mathematics are derived. You need to have a logically sound system for where morality comes from. I'm not saying, people who don't understand math can still do math. People who don't understand higher level mathematics, people who don't understand higher level logical systems, they don't need to understand at the higher level math to participate in writing an equation. But if it's a different question altogether, do you rationally and logically arrive at where math comes from, then that is a question of requiring theism. So the question of the afterlife, heaven is spending eternity with God. That's the simplest explanation of heaven. That's a big topic that we're just going to give a simple answer to for the time being. Heaven is God's eternal presence. So why do you have to be religious to get into God's eternal presence? God must exist in order to spend eternity with God. That's my articulation. That's my worldview of what heaven is. Heaven is God's presence. So if heaven is God's eternal presence, you require God's presence in the first place initially to enter into heaven. I hope that makes sense. I imagine there's disagreements in the worldviews, and that's totally okay. Let's just keep dialoguing about this, Join the Discord, write me emails, follow me on Instagram. Whatever questions you guys have, to the best of my ability, I'll answer. The weekend's coming up. I can't wait to just do a deep dive yap session into these things. I'm sorry that this is going to be a shorter video, but I do have to get going. So, long story short, folks, believe in God. Even if you don't want to. Even if you don't want to, you should. And by the time you start believing in God, you'll realize, oh, wow, I wanted to do that all along. And if my Christian language of believe in God, serve Christ, read the Bible, if you disagree with that language and you're still here watching every one of these videos, you're one of my favorite people on this earth. God bless you. There is quite literally no one I respect more than a person who is willing to entertain and listen and understand a different worldview. And I want to do the same for you guys. I'll always lend my ear to hearing out your worldview, even if I disagree with your worldview, even if I disagree with what you think. I'll listen and I'll respond and I'll try to understand. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you made it this far, please consider subscribing. 70% of my viewers are not subscribed. 70% are not subscribed. We could have so many more subscribers if everyone who watched subscribed. So please consider subscribing. It's totally free. You can always change your mind. If you have any questions, join the Discord. Drop down in the YouTube comments. I hope you guys have such a blessed day. You are dearly loved and you are always welcome here. Signing out for now, boys. Ciao.